Use pre-share key, or you are going to use what kind of authentication? AAA, or you use username and password authentication. Unless I forgot to, in terms of AAA server, some company can have a design where it's merged with your domain controller and the device is authenticated. So authentication is made by the device itself. So we have device authentication and user authentication. User, you put in your credential. The device, as long as you are the laptop is a valid or corporate laptop, which is part of the domain, you will be authenticated to certain wireless. And all of it use AAA server. So you have to, as a wireless engineer, you have to identify all this. Do they want device of authentication or user authentication or pre-share authentication? Now, once you know that requirement from them, the next thing you have to do is you have to go and watch. So now I know the requirement, and I know that there is an existing SSID for pre-share. So I come here and take the pre-share one and see their design concepts and the password. You will be aware of it. Now, if you don't know the password on it, you just log on. And once you are a network engineer, this will not be disabled. Let me show you this. It will not be disabled. So when you go to, let me see, change network adapter, and you go to this, and you go to wireless properties, and you go to security, and you go to this, you see the SSID in clear test. Okay, so if you can't see it on the how do you call it, the wireless controller, or you don't know it offhand, you can just come here and you can see it in clear test. So your SSID can be seen here, but most of the time, if you are just a normal user, you can't go to this far. They will deny you access of coming here because you don't want users to be putting in some IP address on their own. So it's always disabled. So when you are working part of the IT or you are part of a certain level, you can't have access to this to know, because if users know this is a breach, you are in big trouble. Okay, so you have to deny them access from here. And this one is denied on the how do you call it, the domain controller. Okay, so that is what I wanted you to see, so you can get it over there too. So that is very important. Now, once you know it, then you mimic the same thing. Now, if it's not pre-share key and it's a AAA server, you just come to existing one, check here, and see what IP they are using here. So assuming they is using AAA server, I'll come and check here, and I'll copy the same thing and use it. Or I can go to security and check the AAA server IP address over here, which is this one, and put it there, and that is it. We are done. Very simple, okay? So
now you get a understanding of how you mimic the environment, but let's go through a project where you have to set up a new one, either adding a new AAA server to the wireless controller or making the wireless controller to act as a AAA server. So that is the process I'm going to work with you now for you to understand how it's all done. So what I show you is when it's already there and you have to add it to one specific SSID, then that is the process you go through to mimic the same information. But in a situation where you have to create a new one, get a new IP address for the AAA server or use the wireless controller as a AAA server, then this is the way you go about it. So pay attention and let's go through that process.
Network from there, then I come to AAA server to configure it here. Now, before I can do this, first I have to connect this wireless controller to the AAA server. So to do that, you go to security, then you go to radios, then you go to authentication. Then with the authentication, you click what? New. So you see that nothing is created yet. If you have created a radio server, you see the radio server IP here. So I don't have anything here. So I'm going to have new. So when you go to new, you put a server IP. I don't have AAA server on my environment, but just for practice, I'm going to use my switch as a AAA server. So I'll say it's 250. Okay. Then you always have to get any default password for the AAA server. And listen to this. The password you put here is the same password you use on your who are those? I have to log the class so that we enjoy without this quink because it makes me lose focus. To use AAA server, there are two things you have to know. One, the wireless controller should be aware of the AAA server. Then the AAA server should also be aware of the wireless controller. Now, what are some of the AAA server we can use? Let me even bring this one here. Okay, so AAA server, which is the radio server, Cisco have what we call ACS, access control server. So the ACS, we have the TACAS or TAC ACS, or you have the ICE. The ICE is identity service engine. So it's more about identity, okay? Identity service engine. So in your job search regarding wireless, you are going to see things. Oh, where is my? You are going to see something relating to this one as well. The ACS, like I'm saying, you can have TACAS or you can have ICES or you can have Microsoft radios. They are also open vendors that you can use. Like Microsoft have one which is even connected to your Active Directory, and they call it LDAP. So you configure with LDAP as well. So you can have any of this on your environment. Now, after we are done with this, you have to pick one authentication method that you said you are using. You cannot be saying you have experience when you cannot talk about it, okay? So you have to pick one as well. You understand? So now we have this method. You can use it to do for either ACS, or you can use it to do for ICE, or you can use it to do for any other radio server apart from LDAP. If it's a method that we use for LDAP, so we go to that one when we get to that one, okay? Now, so let's go to this one. So you put a default password. So let me put this 123 here, and I put 123 also here. Then I do apply. So now if you go to your environment, you want to see whether your radio server, the IP address of your radio server, you go to wireless security, then you go to radios authentication, and you see right there that your IP address is there, okay? So this is your radio server. So assuming you are doing migration meaning that you have old wireless controller, you are migrating to a new wireless controller. That is a full job, okay? You are just mimicking what is there to the new one. So all the configuration that they have, you just open it, like the example that Demon is saying. This is something that with now he should be able to do it, which means that you have, let's say, 4400, which has a capacity for just 100 APs, and your company is expanding, so you want to have more. Okay, let me see if somebody is asking question. Prof, we can't see your face. Oh, okay, that is old one. Based on this one, as I'm saying, you go to, so if you want to mimic, you take one by one and just configure the same thing. So in terms of your AAA server, you just make sure that what you have here, okay, is what you are going to use on your new wireless controller, okay? Now, when you are done over here, you also have to go to, how do you call it? Your wireless LAN to use this method. So then I'll go to my wireless LAN, assuming I want to use this NetPro to be for AAA server. Then I go to security, I go to AAA server, Then when I come here, I come and choose the server that I want to use. So before, you will not get this IP. Now I have the IP there. So I'll just pick that IP. And once I pick that IP, that is all. There is nothing else to do over here. Now this one, never click it. When you click it, you override the interface for the SSID. So you don't click this one. There are specific reasons you can use it, but I hardly will be using it in any company. But if you are mimicking, you can watch what they are doing and produce the same thing. I believe that you will not be using something like that. So you have it here. Then after you're done with this one, then you apply. So when you apply, it means that all your SSID are going to use AAA server authentication. Okay. Now, when you do it on the wireless controller, you are not done. You also have to go to the ACS. So when you look at my guide that I've given you, after you are done here, I said configure ACS radio server. Why will you do that? Because you have to make this IP address of your wireless controller to be aware, or you want to make the AAA server to be aware of your wireless controller. You guys get what I'm saying? It's very, very important. So you want it to be aware of the wireless controller. So once you want it to be aware of the wireless controller, I've given all the interface and step by step. This is step by step. You just copy the same, or you follow the same instruction for ACS, and you follow the same instruction for how do you call it, ICE as well. What devices? What are the three components when it comes to 802.x? You have the client asking for credential. No, you have the client credential, which is called supplicant. You have the authenticator asking for the credential. So if you go to any office environment, you want to connect to a wireless network, which is using AAA server. So your laptop want to connect to it. So this one will ask, what is your credential? Then this one will supply it. When it's supplied, then the AAA will validate it. So these are the three rows. The supplicant, which is the client, what it does is it provides credential. The authenticator, which is the AP, asks for the credential. The authentication server validates the credential. This is very, very important in an interview, okay? Don't forget that thing. Supplicant, authenticator, and authentication server, if you want to deal with this thing. So what it means is that if this doesn't validate it, it means that the client cannot what? Connect to the network. So in terms of 802.1x or the DAP, we have 4 components of it. We have the LEAP, we have the EAP fast, we have the PIP, and we have the EAP TLS. Guys, if you are going for wireless interview, you have to know this. You have to know this, which means that what are the ingredients for, how do you call it? Or what are the layers for 802.1x or EAP? What are the components? What are the 4 components for it? So we have LEAP, we have EAP fast, we have PIP, and we have EAPTLS. Okay. Now, this LEAP, if you are using LEAP and you are using fast, there is always mutual authentication, and there is also what we call you are using username and password. So if I'm using any of this method, it's going to be username and a password. So what it means is that the client will supply the username and the password. So if you want to connect to that SSID, the moment you do connect, it will ask for username and it will ask for what? Password. When you put the username and you put the password, then you can connect when the AAA server authenticates you. So the LEAP and the fast, the EAP fast, talk of username and password. Don't forget that. Now, when it comes to the PIP and the TLS, it talk about digital certification. Now, the PIP, the clients will supply username and password. and the server will validate it with a digital certification. Let me go over it again. So if you look at this thing that we see here, what it means is that any of the components that we'll be using, whether the leap, whether the PIP, or whether the fast, or whether the TLS, any of them, things you have to know is with the leap and the fast, this one will only be asking for, or will only provide username and password. Always this will be username and password. And this will validate the username and password. That is the true session. Now, when it comes to the PIP, this will be username and password, and this will validate it with a digital certificate. Do I make sense? Now, the last one, which is the TLS, both end as certification validation. So this will validate based on digital certificates. This will validate based on what? How do you call it? Local certificate as well. In fact, I'll be surprised any company using the last, because it's more complication to deploy. So most of the company that I know they use is the first three, where the user, which is the client machine, provide username and password, then the server authenticates both. You guys get what I'm saying? So the server will authenticate both the user and password and say, yes, I agree. So there is mutual understanding between the client and the server before communication can take place. If this server does not authenticate you or agree to your username and password, you get your password is wrong, or you get something like your username is wrong, or those things that we meet all the time, okay? So that agreement should be formed before you, because look, this has made wireless relevant, because wireless was very vulnerable, very vulnerable. When we do ethical hacking, you can see that you can hack most of the things relating to wireless. But in AAA environments, it's very difficult to hack, all because of this component, okay? Now, this server that you have here will be a different device. You can have a deployment. Let me say, please pay attention very well. If you want to work as a wireless engineer, I want you to pay attention and understand what I'm saying, please. Now, this server that you have here, you can have this to be a different device, which will be a radio server, which will be a different device, which can be the ICE, or which can be the, how do you call it, ACS or something, okay? Or you can make the wireless controller to act as a AAA server. I want to repeat it again. The AAA server can be different device, or the wireless controller can act as a AAA server. And under the security, let me be sure that I've not forgotten. You go to local DAP, okay, then you go to profile. So I'll create profile, and in that profile, I'm going to, okay, before I even create the profile, let me go back. You see that you have all the three methods here. You have the leap, you have the EAP fast, you have, so most wireless controllers have the capability of being a radio server as well, okay? The only disadvantage with this one is you either have to make sure you create all local users on this, or you have a way that you can merge your, what is the name? Your AD to authenticate them through your server over here. But to do that, you create your profile. So I create a profile here. So the profile that I'm going to create, let me say locally. Let me use locally. Then I do what? Apply. Okay, so I'm going to use this for what purpose? I'm going to use it for leap. When I say leap, what method am I using? Let me ask a question to see that you are all following what I'm saying. Daniel Dompre, if I use leap, what method am I going to, in terms of the supplicant, what is he going to provide?
I had a question on that. Prof, say again.
But don't pray, you don't have a baby. Why is the baby crying? Huh? Or you giving birth now? My question was, I'm going to make this one to act as a radio server. So making this to act as a radio server, I'm going to make sure that I create a local profile for the server. And creating the local profile, I'm going to ensure that, how do you call it? This local lib, I select the lib. Now, if I select the lib here, and I click apply, it means that the supplicant will provide something. And I'm saying that the supplicant will provide what?
Yeah, someone just said it. The username and password.
Very good, very good. SSID and those things, it's not difficult. Authentication is very, very, very important, okay? So lib will provide what? Username and password. And when I say fast, it will provide what?
Digital certificate.
The supplicant will provide what?
The digital certificate.
If I use fast, no.
No, other one. Username and password too.
Username and password. And the authentication server will validate with what?
Username and password too.
Very good. Then when it comes to TLS, the user will supply what?
The digital certification. That's one I have a question about.
Okay. Then the authentication will also validate with digital certification. With the PIP is only the server side is the one which will be digital. The user side will be what? Password and user. Okay. Now, in terms of certification, let me see your question before we come to that.
No, it's the same thing with the certification. I don't know how. Like, I don't understand that part.
This one means. So it means that if a user is authenticated, the certification forum should validate that yes, this is the right source or is part of a corporate network, so you can allow communication. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you apply. Okay, so you apply. So now I've created this one. Okay. Once I've created this one, I can enable SSID, but in this case, you have to create local user. So you have to create local user to test. But this one, I'm not going to do it to test because I'll be logged off. So you create a local user, you confirm your password, then you apply. So you use this local user to log on to the device. But when you come to the wireless LAN over here, and you want to authenticate one of them to be for that purpose. Okay, this is still. So what you have to do is you have to choose local EAP authentication. So when you choose local EAP authentication, you will see that what you've created is available. So if it's available, then you click apply. You don't have to have this both. This one I'm just doing for explanation purpose. So in that case, this will be none. Okay, you have here has to be none because you can't have two AAA server working. So that one you choose the local EAP authentication, you check it, and it gives you chance to choose the one that you want to use for, or the one that you created, and you want to use the local one. Yes, so I want the local one. This one I don't want, so I can remove them from. And the LDAP, there is no LDAP, so I can remove them. If you want to bring them back, you come here and you bring it back. You come here and you bring it back to where it was. So that is how it is. So this is all about AAA authentication method for wireless.